healthcare 15 years ago, I guess, almost. Digital health was the new shiny object. And whether it was actually impactful to healthcare in the US, no one seemed to care. They just wanted a portfolio of digital health products. I think that's happening with AI. We have a lot of barbarians, right, in business that want to go to their board or their bosses and say, we're using AI, where it isn't terribly relevant.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Steven from tomtA, and we'll be diving into his story a little bit today, as well as what it is that his company does and some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure to stick around for this one. I can't wait. But without further ado, Steven, welcome to the Grow IT podcast.
Thank you, Treg. My pleasure. Don't change that channel, right? I'm old enough to say things like that.
Excellent. If you don't mind, if we can maybe kick things off, if you can kindly just introduce yourself and tell us a quick snippet of your story.
Of course. So I'm, as you shared, Steven Atneosen, CEO and co-founder of tomtA.ai. And tomtA generates safe data from sensitive data to make it precise and compliant with privacy laws around the world to ensure effective AI. So that's what tomtA does, real in a nutshell. My path to tomtA is a long one, but a very understandable and consistent one, which is trained as a lawyer. Early in my career, was a litigator, DA, U.S. Supreme Court appeal, had the privilege of adjudicating one of those. Went into a big firm to support entrepreneurs because I'm very entrepreneurial in my viewpoint as a human, right? I'm very retail oriented to solve problems. And then, of course, got impatient with serving and advising startups and joined a startup in the 1999 timeframe. So enjoyed, again, all that, dot-com boom, 9/11, getting, skinny and smart about, surviving the the ebb and flow of funding.
Yes.
But my focus has always been, how do I improve the human condition or an industry, leveraging data to ensure that people make better decisions and they're not overly consumptive, but more resource mindful. So that means that my first startup was in the automotive space because I was a car guy early in my career and loved the auto industry, but hated everything about that wasn't the product, meaning I loved Porsches, I loved BMWs, but I hated the dealership experience. And of course, who didn't? So in fact, so much so, right, that Cars Direct, you could buy a car online without ever going, that they took off, right?
Yeah.
But again, me being a former franchise and distribution lawyer, knowing that business would fail because, again, in America, you can't sell directly. You can't be vertically integrated as a car manufacturer. So early on, I started learning about systems, right? That education as a lawyer taught me about the systems that are in place and how to disrupt them. Is it possible? So our first startup was an e-tailer, but we quickly pivoted to supply chain management. So we connected the dots of automotive aftermarket and supply chain to ensure that, again, if you showed up to drop your car off at your dealer or your independent mechanic, that they would have the technology to get the right part at the right time, for your model, right? That didn't exist, by the way, in 2000 at all. Like, they just have to look at big books and guess, and and then you'd show up. Again, you're probably not old enough, but you drop your car off and they say, oh, we got the wrong part. It's gonna be another 4 days, blah, 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 blah. So that was my early entry into how to understand data, how to leverage data, accurate data, and to ensure that, again, be mindful of the customer experience. Had a successful exit there, so went on to a bigger and grander role at a company called Aristocrat. You might know them. They're like an IGT, right? So they're the number 2 gaming technology company in the world, right? And because of what I had done at Car Parts, I had fended off, CCI Triad and Reynolds and Reynolds, who tried to kill us by suing us. And they were impressed with my ability to navigate that that ecosystem, they said, hey, we're at this point of disruption in gaming, right? They were all location-based technology, and the vision was server-based gaming. So again, heavily regulatory issues involved there, right? Because again, the regulators weren't crazy about having connected devices. So went into that role. And then I, did that for a few years. And then I went into financial services, having lived in New York City, because what do you do as a technology lawyer and startup guy in New York City? Well, you serve financial services. And that was fascinating too, to see how those
Interesting.
systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I got a penchant for healthcare, and so dove deep into digital health. And again, understood the US healthcare system and saw an opportunity to leverage data again to ID and strata population to help humans understand and make better decisions around what they eat and how they exercise and how they live,
Yeah.
to ensure they can avoid chronic illnesses. So, and then of course, the lightning strike of all lightning strikes was, and I did a couple of healthcare startups that we had good exits. But NIO came along. NIO is a Tesla competitor. I don't know if you know NIO, but it's a pretty big company. It's publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
It started as Next EV. And so I helped one of the founders build the enterprise product.
Oh, wow.
The enterprise. So effectively, think about the platform, the
Yeah.
battery pack, battery solution systems, the drive systems, everything that we call it the skateboard, and the vehicle intelligence system. So NIO's vehicles, all their consumer cars, and they have 7, I think, in market now,
Yeah.
are all based on that platform that we developed. Swappable battery packs, right? It was China first, then it went to Europe, right? And so now, if you're a European, you can get these cars like, say, in Norway or Denmark or Germany, and we were vertically integrated. So I learned I took what I learned early in my career and said, yeah,
Yeah. And applied.
just like
Yeah.
Tesla, right? Why bother with dealers? They're absolutely useless, actually valueless. They're a plague on the buyer experience, right? Because the
Yeah.
minute that you buy a car that's sold to a dealer, that car becomes a liability to the manufacturer because now it's a warranty claim.
No,
See the
so
problem there with that system? Versus
yeah,
if you're a Tesla or a NIO customer,
it's a double up.
I want to provide value to you during your entire experience. Even if you don't own a car, even if you don't lease the car, even if you're just riding in the car, even if it's a car share service or a ride share service. So we thought much bigger. We thought as a mobility play, not as a car manufacturer.
Mm.
So that's my pathway. And then of course, the lightning strike that is tomtA was all of these things in order to deliver value to you, the end user, need data.
Yep.
And how do you leverage data? And there are 2 inherent problems with leveraging data. One is, in order for me to be relevant to you as a customer and be a safe vendor, I have to preserve the privacy of your data. I have to let you know that if you're going to use my product, I won't violate my pledge of privacy to you. And then secondly, I have to make sure that I take the data that you allow me to use and I actually add value to you beyond just a simply product experience, right? So so with tomtA, the lightning strike to me was every organization in the world has a problem with sensitive data. And the sensitive data meaning PII, right? Personally identifiable information, whether it's your healthcare data, whether it's your financial data, whether it's how you move about the city. These are things that I would expect you don't want to be shared.
Definitely
So
not.
yeah, I mean, well, certainly not shared with not safe partners, right? And
Yeah.
so, but that data is the most valuable data in order to help how serve you and your interests. Like, how do I
Mm.
get somewhere? How do I
Mm.
make better choices about my health, my safety of my family?
Mm.
So tomtA has developed a technology that our customers can use. It's not a service, it's a technology because again, it's a highly sensitive environment.
Yeah.
They can use our technology to create a safe equivalent, a precise and safe equivalent of that data. So if you have, let's say, your healthcare provider has
Yeah.
all of your family's healthcare information, right? And your genetic information and your pharma and your lab results, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than your physician, when you take your children to the physician and they need to look up, Jane, that's your 7-year-old, right? and I'm just making this up, of course,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
Treg, I don't know if Treg has a 7-year-old called Jane.
I've got
But
I've got
anyway,
an 8-year-old.
so, but he needs, that physician, he or she needs to know, oh, that's Jane's information. But other than that use case,
Yeah.
absolutely no one else in that provider system needs to know that it's Jane's health data. Everyone else on the analytics, operations, ML, and data science teams, all they need to know is that data represents an individual, right, who has these conditions to do their job. And the
Yes.
problem now is we're still sharing that radioactive data with everybody. And guess what happens? It's released, it's breached, it's
Yeah,
shared
it's
accidentally.
shared.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
that's the problem. That's the
we're the
problem at the
answer
moment,
to
right?
that. Yeah. And if you want to talk about synthetic data
Yeah.
as a solution, I would say for PII data, it's absolutely not a solution, and I'll leave it there. We can delve more deeply into that.
Got
So
it.
that's me, and
It's
that's what we do.
Yeah, no, and thank you for explaining a couple of things as well. I mean, I think calling it being around the block is maybe not the right choice of words, but I mean, you've been at a couple of
Beaten around the block, yes.
yes, and the I would like to hear your take on, what's your thoughts on currently where the market is currently at from a trend perspective, right? What would you say have you picked up on the latest trends, call it in the IT sector? Things that you've picked up. What ways are the winds blowing these days?
Well, the wind, obviously I'm in Silicon Valley, so it's like asking a tiger to eat salad. I'm going to eat meat. I'm from Silicon Valley. So
Well said.
I
I
have that
love that
problem
analogy.
of being a bit myopic. However, being a global guy, I can
Yeah,
say that not just from Silicon Valley, but from what I've seen from partners like Databricks, and
yeah,
I'm obviously in market, right, globally. We, have good partners in Sweden and that sort of thing. Is AI is the new shiny object,
yeah,
of course, right?
yeah.
But it's sort of like when I was in healthcare 10, 12 years, hell, I should say heck. Healthcare 15 years ago, I guess, almost. Digital health was the new shiny object. And whether it was actually impactful to healthcare in the US, no one seemed to care. They just wanted a portfolio of digital health products. I think that's happening with AI. We have a lot of what's the barbarians, right, in business that want
Right.
to go to their board or their bosses and say, we're using AI, where it isn't terribly relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of unsophistication in the marketplace,
I
which
agree.
means opportunity for people like you and me, right? Means
Yeah.
our job is to educate them, to help them help themselves, right?
Yeah.
I liken it to climate change, right? And I know it's a strange analogy, but hear me out. So if you're Nordic or you're European, you're far smarter about the promise of being sustainable as a community, as a family, right? Because in the long run, you'll be more successful. Americans are a bit stupid in this regard. We're going to rush to make money, even though the way we're making money may only work for a quarter or two. And then we'll realize, oh my God, we just violated GDPR. Oh my God, we just violated the Meta as a prime example, right?
Would you say, like, typically Nordic, typically European, would you say rather play the long game a bit more than than the
Yes.
Americans? Got
Yes.
it.
Americans, we are idiots when it comes to short-term gains over long-term benefits. Just look at us politically, right? Look at us as the way we live. I mean, you've been here, right? So my European friends, when they come here, our partners, they're like, why does everyone drive giant pickup trucks and SUVs and that burn gas, right? And why don't they walk anywhere? Why do they drive a quarter of a mile to drop their kids off in their giant trucks? And no one, like my European friends, think, what a horrible way to live, right? And here in Americans go, oh, I want to drive my big truck everywhere I want to go, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying that is an analogy for how we treat any, it makes sense, right? From a logical process. So when it comes to like Meta is a prime example, they're a bad actor, right? They
Yeah.
eschew smart, sustainable practices for early gains. And so they'd rather pay $1 billion and I think it's over $1 billion now where they paid in GDPR fines,
Yeah,
stupidly
yeah.
so, right? They don't need to do this, but they
Oh,
just do.
that's actually quite interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't think about that. Wow.
Yeah. So
The
there's a lot
yeah,
of those
almost
companies. Yeah.
it's like to me it's a maybe it's a bit more like instant gratification as well, right?
Yes, but
Uh,
that's an American. So
yeah,
Americans, our culture is consumptive, right? And so all I'm saying is, don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalistic pig dog. Absolutely. I want to make money, but I
yeah,
want to make money in something that I actually add value. I provide value to my customers sustainably, meaning I'm really adding value to what they do, and I'm helping them build a business that is sustainable and competitively so, right? They will be more competitive because I guarantee you that although Meta doesn't think privacy matters to their customers, I don't
yeah,
know anyone who's used it for 10 years. None of my colleagues use it. I mean,
yeah,
Facebook, are you crazy? I mean, why it's, we know they're a bad actor in privacy, right?
yeah,
And then you meet the people who work there and they have no muscle for these sort of ethical decisions. So all I'm saying is, you know, and again, I'm not saying that every company in America is that way, but look
mm,
at OpenAI, look at all the Gen AI companies that are stumbling into, oh shit, our models leak privacy,
yeah,
right? Well, they should know better because people like us are around telling them it will leak privacy, but they don't care because they'd rather bend the rules or break the rules. And again, I love innovators. We have
mm,
to break some rules, but not the ones that protect us, right?
yes,
I mean,
yes,
it's sort of like road rules.
or leave the door open. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, there are rules that protect our lives and our fundamental right to privacy. Those
yeah,
rules should not be broken. But
got it.
yes, conventions, yes. So, Tesla, Elon Musk, say what you will about him personally, especially in this past few weeks.
Yeah,
But Tesla, I mean, having done what he did behind him, right, helping build a company in that space, I can't imagine how hard that was as an American company, right? To knowing what I do know about the American auto industry, right? Think about
yeah,
this. He had no suppliers willing to work with him. So yeah, I don't know what kind of car you drive, but if it's probably a Japanese or German, right? It's,
yeah,
if it's a BMW, it's mostly tier one manufacturers, right? It's Bosch and Continental, and it's all those like Audi, BMW, Mercedes are probably 80% the same cars. If you, let's say, drive an A4,
yeah,
the C class, they're all good cars. They're all almost identical underneath because they're all the same suppliers, right? They just have
yes,
a different brand skin on it. And so all I'm saying is he didn't get like 80% of that. No one would give him or work with him because they didn't think he'd survive. So no one's going to commit to that customer, right? So they had to invent everything themselves, which effectively saved them. So I think that's an example of breaking rules and
yeah,
adapting in a clever way. And so he iterated cars every few months. Like if you look at a Model 3 2 years ago and a Model 3 today, they are significantly different cars, different
mm,
subframes, different.
mm,
I mean, they keep improving them each
yes,
few months. If you go to a BMW, they don't touch it for 5 years, right?
yes,
So they
definitely.
launch it, they make it for 5 years. They may freshen up the taillights, and that's, by the way,
Give it
suppliers,
some
not
makeup.
them. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then they go, now we're going to do a whole refresh on the car. So I think as technologists, we have to embrace that change, but we have to be clever about where and ethical about where we go.
where we go with it. Then, if you don't mind, I would like to hear your take on, step aside maybe a bit from specifics towards the business side of things. Just maybe a bit more in your own thoughts on mindset that you think is needed to like really be a successful founder of a company. What would your take be on that?
Uh, I am blessed with having done this for a while,
Yeah,
being in early 0 to 1, and of course, private equity backs in
equity. Yeah,
turnarounds. So, that are different ecosystems. I mentor at StartX, I mentor at Skydeck and plug and play. So I get the benefit of meeting brilliant founders. And I would say, uh, definitely the successful founders are tenacious. meaning they have a very positive outlook. They know how to leverage limited resources. They know how to say no, because
Yeah.
every founder thinks that the way to success is to say yes to every opportunity. And I'm sure you know that's not the way
Yeah.
to do it,
Not
because
all
you
clients
can't
are good
do
clients.
everything. Yeah. So you have to focus on what you can do. My
Yeah.
favorite is I've had many conversations with young founders at, like, say, StartX or Skydeck, and they say, Stephen, I don't know what to do. I have so many options. And I'm like, no, you don't have so many options. Let's look
Yeah.
at the market and let's see where you are in your product. Let's work backwards to what you can accomplish, right? And they go, oh yeah, so really I have three options. I said, exactly. You have three options. So go after those three options. Don't go after 100 options, right?
Yes.
Because you cannot be successful. And then lastly, just be resilient. There's a lot you don't know. Be inquisitive, pay attention to what customers tell you. And then, well, I guess lastly, let me correct myself. Lastly, I'll say have integrity, work with integrity. If you start a company, you probably have a very strong opinion about what you think is broken and how to fix it. And so don't shy away from that. Of course, don't be the guy. And again, this is a problem I have. I'm so adamant about it that I think I'm right about it. But you also have to be open about what customers are telling you about either your approach or whether you're right about it. And so again, don't be easily defeated, but and know that maybe the customer you're talking to isn't your customer, right?
Customer. Yeah,
They're
that's
just
good.
not an early customer, right?
Yeah.
So that's my general
Good
summary
take.
of
Well, I need
advice.
to thank you. I think there was a couple of golden nuggets we got there, definitely. Stephen, I just want to thank you. I can see we're running out of time here. I want to thank you there's a couple of value points that you mentioned today about your business that I can fully understand and grasp why is it that you guys are so successful. So I would like to first off commend you on that. It's hard work, right? And as well as these last couple of things that you mentioned now. So I want to thank you for your contribution first and foremost. And then it was fun to finally meet you. And I had such a good time having you on. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Treg. Thank you.
Lovely. All the best. Take care.
You bet.